Okay, ladies and gents, we're looking at review 4. So starting with review 4, we're going over the cell membrane and cell transport. On your little diagram here, right at the top, your phospholipid bilayer, you should have done these two guys right here because bi means two, and this is two layers playing footsie with each other. A carrier protein changes shape to bring things across, so this should be the carrier protein right here. All right, and then channel proteins have an opening through them like a straw, an open channel. So that is this one right there. When we're talking about hydrophobic, it means it's afraid of the water. That's going to be the middle of your cell membrane. That's the layer that does not like the water, doesn't want anything to do with the water because it's made out of fats. So hydrophilic means it loves water. That's going to be the little round phosphates at the top here. Either outside your cell or inside, doesn't matter. Your cells are surrounded by water and they're filled with cytoplasm, which is mostly water. The phosphate head is this single round part. Fatty acid tails are the two legs coming down off the phospholipid. And then the carbohydrate chain is sitting here on top, and that helps with cell communication and attachment. And these little yellow things, which you did not need a label, but what those are is cholesterol, which helps keep your membrane fluid, because remember this is called the fluid mosaic model. All right, so hopefully all this other stuff you can find out either through your notes or through the internet. Right here, when we're looking at number 8 with your solutions, remember that water always moves towards the most solutes, and the most solutes is hyper, because hyper means more, like hyperactive is more active, is hypertonic. So if the inside of your cell is hypertonic, the opposite of more is less. So it would be less out here, more inside. So this would be hypotonic. All right, now here the water's coming out, so water always goes towards the most solutes, which is hyper. So this would be a hypertonic solution. And in this way, it's going in and out equally. That would be your isotonic solution. All right, so looking down here at our SOL questions, we got to know if the solution, again, is hypertonic, hypotonic, or isotonic, and draw our arrow. So looking at the first one, that's 10% solutes outside, 10% inside. And because they are the same, it is an isotonic solution. And you should have an arrow then going in and out. So you can put that in using your insert right here and using your shapes. And there you have an arrow right there that goes both sides. All right, over here we got 10% in the cell, 2% outside. Water always moves towards the most solute. So that means water is going to go into this. And this is hyper, which means the outside is hypo, it's less. And if all that water is going into that cell is going to swell and possibly burst if it's an animal cell, which it does look like an animal cell. Over here, we got 10% salt inside, 30 outside. So we have more outside. That means outside is hypertonic. And the water is going to go towards that. So it's going to leave the cell. And that means this cell is going to shrink up. Now we're down to our multiple choice. It says, look at the cross-section of the cell membrane of a eukaryotic cell. The H+ ions are being pumped from low to high. So first of all, if it's low to high, think about my little guy on a mountain that I did with the guys in the boat. If you're going from the low end of the mountain to the high end, all right, if you are doing, let me get a shape up here. All right, here's my mountain. Okay, and you're going from low to high. All right, you're going this direction, and you're a little guy in the boat, you're going to have to use a lot of energy to go from low to high. And you can see in the picture there's ATP there. So our kind of transport that uses energy is active transport. All right, a person with swollen gums rinses his mouth with warm water, and the swelling decreases. So that means that water is leaving our cell, right? If it's leaving our cell, it's going out into the solution. That means, right, if it's leaving the cells and going out in the solution must be hypertonic, must have some stuff. So are your gums absorbing the salt water? No, that's ridiculous. That would make them swell more. The saltwater solution lowers the temperature. Is that what's making the difference? No, it doesn't have anything to do with temperature. The salt of the solution is moved against the concentration gradient. It's not the salt that's moving, it's the water. So it's got to be D. The water in the gums has moved out due to high concentration of salt in the solution. Because it's a hypertonic solution, water moves out towards it. All right, number 4, look at the diagram, cross-section of the cell membrane to the right. The cell membrane controls movements of materials into and out of the cell. The following particles are moving from high to low. So now we're going down, right? Before we were going up, and now we're going to go down this. So that's not going to take any energy to do that, right? So these are moving from high concentration to low, but what are they going through? They're going through a carrier protein. So what kind of transport is going from high to low? Well, it's not going to be active, right? So it's not water molecules, so it's not osmosis. So it's either simple diffusion or facilitated. Well, remember, facilitated means to help. So in this case, you got a protein helper. That's facilitated diffusion. Number 5, the cell membrane of a red blood cell will allow water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide to pass through. Because other substances are blocked from entering, the cell membrane is called, so in other words, it lets some things through and not others. And that is called semi-permeable, because some things can permeate through and some things cannot, semi-permeable. Number 6, osmosis occurs when there is a difference in concentration of solute molecules on each side of the membrane. The drawing below shows a beaker containing 30% salt, all right, whereas my cell only has 10% salt. So remember, we're always looking at the solutes, not the water. So looking at the solutes, what's going to happen? Well, remember, water moves towards the most solutes. So that means the water is going to leave the cell and go out into this 30% solution. And so the cell would essentially end up shrinking, right? So water will move from the cell into the beaker, resulting in a smaller cell, is correct. All right, number 7, in the cell membrane model shown to the right, the molecules which move large molecules into and out of the cell are known as. So the things that help large molecules across are your proteins, your channel and your carrier proteins. When there is a lower concentration of water, now notice they're talking about water here, so this can get confusing because what we really looked at is the solutes. But if you have less water, that means you have more solutes. When there is a lower concentration of water outside the plant, or more solutes, than inside the plant will tend to. Well, if you got less water and more solutes, water always moves towards the most solutes. So that means water is going to leave your plant cell. This doesn't have anything to do with it growing towards the sun, but if the plant loses water, it will lose water and wilt, right? It's not going to gain water in that situation for sure, and it doesn't have anything to do with photosynthesis if there's less water out there. Some peeled pieces of apple were placed in distilled water, that's pure water with no solutes, and some are very salty. The cells in the apple pieces will. So if some were put in distilled water with 0 solutes, that means the cell has to have more solutes, and water is going to enter the cell. But if it's in salty water, it's the opposite, because water is going to move towards the most solutes, and that one would lose it. So they're not both going to lose or both gain, but they will gain water in distilled and lose water in salty. Number 10, the concentration of glucose must be maintained within a fairly narrow range in most vertebrates. This statement is an example of, well, you're keeping your glucose in balance or the same, and our root word for same is homo, so homeostasis, all right? Number 11, a microorganism which releases water into its environment to regulate its salinity during osmosis is undergoing a process that is similar to the human body who releases moisture on a hot day. This process that helps keep both the microorganism and the human body fluids in balance, there's that key word again, in balance or the same, once again known as B, homeostasis. Number 12, a student studying the responses of cells to solutions of varying salt concentration, which one cause no change? So in order for there to be no change, you have to have an isotonic solution. And that means they're going to be the same. So 1 and 5, not the same. 1 and 0, not the same. 1 and 10, not the same. 1 and 1 is the same. So G should be your answer for that one. Hope this helps. Bye, guys.